Ransom in California. Ransom, you are on the air. Truth Wanted, what's going on?
Oh, doing great, Dan. I ain't talked to you in a few months, and I'm stuck in the house for the weekend until the test comes back, so I thought I'd give you a call.
Hey, might as well, right? It's something to do. Thanks for choosing to spend your time with me and Shannon on this awesome July 3rd evening. How can we help you?
Well, I want to propose the hypothesis that we live in a simulation, and I think I have some more evidence and arguments that haven't been presented yet, at least not that I've seen often.
Okay, I have no idea what evidence for a simulation would look like outside of maybe like some breaks in the laws of physics or something. So I guess I'm curious to see what you mean by evidence. And if you do a philosophical argument on me, Ransom, we're going to have a conversation because philosophical arguments are not evidence, but go ahead.
Oh, no. This one I can league up a little bit for. But
All
first
right.
of all, I want to start with Planck time and length.
Oh my
goodness. Smallest measurable units of time and length.
Sure.
Now, we see this directly in video game simulations, televisions, that everything out there. The fact that we don't see fluid and we see smallest measurable units in our universe leads me to believe that it would be more likely something that is digital rather than organic.
Okay, why?
Simply because I don't think something that was organic would have a smallish measurable unit.
Why?
Because it's organic, and anytime we try to replicate organics, anytime we try to replicate something organic with a screen, we do our best to get rid of those fine lines.
Well, we may do our best to get rid of those fine lines, but that doesn't necessarily mean those lines aren't there, right? I mean, like, organic things are still made of like atoms and like subatomic particles, and like you can look at, you know, the individuality of those things. I don't see how that necessarily leads to the conclusion that it's most likely we're in a simulation.
That's my first point, is that we have a smallest measurable unit and we see a smallest measurable unit. And I think it was last time that I talked to you, one of the bases is we tend to explain things based on other things we understand.
Sure.
If we have no examples of an area that doesn't have a smallest measurable unit, and we have examples that we have replicated that have smallest measurable units, then what it leads us to is that it is more likely that it's something we know of than something that we would have to make up.
Here's the first thing I see with that, and then I think Shannon has something to say there. I'm not sure, but like, okay, so
I generally do.
Okay, if we're talking about video games, right, that necessarily is in our world. Okay, so like if we're in a simulation, then that thing is also like part of the simulation. So like I get what you're saying with that, but like I think you're almost confusing the map with the territory here, right? Because it's like we can do that with video games because our world is, you know, measurable and defined. And maybe it's just easier for us to do it when we create video games because, you know, we define those parameters, right? But maybe it's only easy for us to do that when we make video games because that's just how the world is. You know, maybe organic life has just always been this way and we just haven't realized it because now our technology is so developed, we can just kind of, you know, do what we do now. Am I making sense?
Yes, I'd like to touch on that in a little bit in just a second, but I want to hear what Shannon has to say first.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, Ransom. Nice to meet you. So first, I'd just like to ask what exactly it is that you mean by smallest measurable unit.
The Planck time and length are basically theoretical units. I think it's I think the Planck meter, the Planck length is 1 to the negative 43 meters, and Planck time is 1 to the negative 23 seconds. Either that, or I've got the numbers mixed up.
So you're
it
talking
is
about units of measurable time back to the beginning of the universe, not
Well, just
organic
correct.
units.
Just
Yeah.
what we can possibly measure in smallest amount of time. What's possible for us to do?
Right. So but that's not our current reality.
No,
Right?
so we can measure things in Planck time,
Mhm.
but like it's just like it's like if we had the smallest ruler possible. Like that's basically what it
Sure.
is. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a measure.
So what you're saying is there's a smallest thing that we can measure. Like we can't perceive anything smaller or conceive of a way to measure anything smaller.
Correct.
Okay, so because we can't perceive of or conceive of a way to measure anything smaller, therefore simulation. You're going to have to get me from one to the other. Because the only thing that you seem to have is an allegorical relationship between the fact that there's also units, like smallest measurable units in video games. But it would stand to reason that if, like Dan said, if we're modeling video games out of our perceivable reality, then we would utilize what we've learned from our perceivable reality in order to create that model, and that the inverse wouldn't necessarily be true.
Yeah.
Our universe wouldn't be based on the model we created, which is what your reference point is. It would be the other way around. So
Exactly.
essentially you're saying we created something that is a simulation using our perceptual and conceptual abilities. Thus, because we utilized our conceptual and measuring abilities to create something that is analogous to the reality that we experience, the reality that we experience is the same. And you can't get me there aside from an analog. And an analog isn't evidence. You're essentially just saying we created something that reflects reality as we see it, and then saying, thus, our reality is similar to the thing that we created to reflect reality as we see it.
Not necessarily, but close. What I'm saying is that we don't have any examples that counter it. So it seems to
counter
me
what?
like it's
Us being
not
in a simulation?
I think he means counter the idea that something can't be measured in the smallest possible unit. Right?
Yeah, we have no examples of something that can't be measured below Planck's. So what we have is we have the similarities. We don't have anything that gives us evidence of a difference. So I think it's more time to try to disprove a simulation hypothesis.
Wait. Oh, you went way off the grid. So there are similarities, but there's no evidence of a difference.
Yeah.
Between us and a simulation.
All right, for that one, there is absolutely no evidence of our reality that you can give me that I cannot give you another demonstration of in a digital universe.
How do they generate internal perceptions in a digital universe for the people that exist within the universe?
RNG.
So there is something that it's like to be every being in a digital universe. And they can make independent choices that deviate from the programmer.
You're talking about like inward perception, and I can flat out tell you if I'm walking behind somebody in a video game, there is a dice roll that we see in the programming that determines whether or not I'll be detected based on the scenario. And part of that randomness in the dice roll would be
how is that similar to real life?
Because in the same sense, that perception will tell you whether or not you see something, whether it's right in front of you or not. There's times that
where's the agency of the other perceiver that has the opportunity to perceive you? If it's a dice roll, then you're removing the agency from that person, and they no longer have individual perceptions. It's the locus of this analogy is you.
Let's define the internal perception of me or a
every being in existence. How many dice rolls do you think have happened in this conversation in order for me to put this pressure on you?
Oh, you're asking me to count butterflies now. Oh, no, there would be hundreds, if not millions, of rolls every plank to determine everything going on.
How do you
And
make your
we see
decisions in the
that-
video game? Are they all dice rolls?
The decisions themselves are not dice rolls, but the outcomes
So are you the only one with agency?
I'm the only one. Well, okay.
So the
For that,
entire
we're going to
universe
have
was
well,
constructed in order for you to
that,
exist.
we're going to have. We'd have to get more specific. If it's talking about me having agency, are we talking about a situation where more than one person can interact within the same digital universe, or are we
You're
talking
saying
about
that this
something more
universe
along-
is digital, so you don't get, if your argument is that the universe we're existing in and interacting in now is a simulation, you need to make every argument you make analogous to this situation we're in now, because we are in reality in this universe that you were arguing is a simulation.
Right, exactly. And what I want to know is exactly what type of simulation are you talking about when you're talking about a perspective, because there are going to be two answers, whether I'm playing a first person game that is an enclosed system, or if I'm playing an MMO that has
But you're not in a game.
We're talking about reality, right?
You're in reality.
Yeah.
The problem is that you're having to make post hoc rationalizations in order to justify your argument being analogous by referring back to the games in order to reconcile the fact that there's dissonance. Because the fact of the matter is that you and I both know that I have agency, as do you. I'm at least aware that I have agency. You and I are having an interaction. This interaction isn't based on dice rolls. It's based on perceptions that I have and perceptions that you have. Unless you can give me a reason to believe that within a simulation, something is going to be able to program individual agency without throwing that system into chaos, I'm not going to be able to buy into your simulation theory as it pertains to the existing reality that we're both in right now. Sorry, Dan, sometimes I talk a lot.
You're good. That's a different way of approaching this conversation. It's very smart. I wasn't even thinking in those terms. I think what I'm thinking of is, yeah, we can make metaphors all day about how what we do is like simulation, because we can simulate anything pretty much. And so just because we can simulate things, though, and again, like it goes back to this idea of missing the trees for the forest, I guess. It's like I agree with what you're saying, Ransom. I think the observations you make about reality and video games are true to the extent of, yes, they're very similar, and yes, it seems uncanny that we can perform anything in real life that we can in a video game, and really vice versa. But like you ask us to disprove that we're not in a simulation, and it's like that's not even, I can't even comprehend that, because like we create simulations. That's why they're simulations. Like they are simulations of reality, and reality is like the base there. You know what I mean? So it's like to go beyond that, like we have to show that there's even another base, because that means that we're simulating something else, and I don't even know what that means. You know, but
No. I wasn't personally saying that y'all. I'm here to prove a claim. I'm saying that as a whole, as a society, I think there's been enough of the evidence there. And I wanted to speak on the second topic, would be, what about a frame perfect glitch that caused matter to cease to be matter?
What about it?
Yeah, right. I like that. I like where you're thinking. They're interesting thought experiments. But I don't, a frame perfect glitch that caused matter to no
Listen,
longer,
Shannon does not play Fortnite, first of all, and I don't.
My son does.
Yeah, I don't. I understand what you're saying. You got to be careful with what the metaphors you're choosing to implement here. I will say that much. But like, I don't know. Are you still there, Ransom? Hello.
I'm still here. I'm listening.
Okay. Okay. So like, what if there's a frame perfect glitch? Like what? What's next? I don't understand.
Well, okay, let me get into this. And okay,
can you make it real quick? Can you do it in the next couple minutes so we can get to the next caller? Yeah.
I speed run games, and part of speed running games is knowing where the physics break so that you can use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
And at the point when you can break physics to work for your advantage, that is the point when I think that we have crossed that line.
And see, that's what I was thinking too, right? Like, that's what I said at the beginning of the call. Like, if we could somehow exploit physics, and maybe not exploit physics because we would still be working with physics, but like do something that would not be explainable by current physical models, that would be something to talk about. That would be really interesting. So I'm with you there. And yeah, I like the speed runs too. I watched that Summoning Salt, man. I like that YouTube channel. He's making some good stuff. But I wish you luck on proving your simulation theories. Like I said,
well,
I think
I've got one more sentence.
One more sentence, Ransom. That's all you got. Lay it on me.
Not observed, electrons fired through a double slit will undergo a wave pattern as though they cease to become matter. Now we're going to go straight to the quantum eraser here.
Whoa! That's more than one sentence, Ransom. That's 2 sentences.
Okay.
That's 2 sentences. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to go ahead and let you go now. But I hear what you're saying, right? You're getting into quantum theory stuff. Like, yeah, there are some interpretations of quantum mechanics that may break everything we know about reality. I'll concede to that much. But I don't know enough about the topic to say anything more than that. You know, and I have to leave it there. I don't know. Maybe if I get a physicist on. But yeah, what'd you think of that, Shannon? What'd you think?
That was interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought exercise. But I felt that way the first time I talked to somebody who not that this is analogous because Ransom seems like he's very clever and very smart. Yeah. But the first time I talked to somebody who believed in a flat earth, I was like, oh, this is silly. And then I realized right away that, oh, this is an interesting thought experiment. Like, how do you prove things? How do you how do you go about figuring out the way to perceive the physical world and how you validate it? And those are good exercises, even though I'm not saying Ransom's analogous to a flat earther, but like having these types of conversations bring me to the realization, oh, okay, well, you do kind of have to like figure out a way to validate your perceptions of the world around you in a way that makes sense as opposed to taking them for granted. So I like, I enjoyed talking to Ransom. It was fun.
Yeah. And like, you know, the simulation stuff comes up every once in a while. I think like, you know, unless you presuppose that we are in a simulation, it's kind of hard to ever figure out if we ever really are in one. Like the simulations I see every day, I can see the computer. I can show you the circuit board. I can show you how it all works. But like, if we're all in a simulation, we can't really do that. Like Neo has that waking up moment in the Matrix, but until we can really have that experience, it's almost kind of null. It almost doesn't, you know, almost doesn't even.
Same sort of like definitional argument that I think I get into with a lot of like deists and pantheists, where essentially like if you're defining God as the universe, then sure, like you're just essentially saying the perceivable reality is God. But if you're saying that the perceivable reality that we exist in is a simulation, then you're just defining perceivable reality as a simulation. I don't really think that you can get to any hard proof unless, you know, like you said, something glitches or we're able to defy physics. And even if it is the case, like, well, I don't care.
That's tricky too, because I mean, stuff that we thought defied the laws of physics, turns out our laws just weren't written as well, right? Like that's something like the equation. It's the difference between like x minus 1 equals y versus x minus 0.9999 or something, right? It's like they're similar but also different and give different results. I don't know, that it gets complicated really fast. But we have some other calls and I want to get to them, but we also have multiple lines still